doing what you can to prevent any kind of problems from happening is your best defense. That's what we call reducing risk. Will it ever be 100% bacteria-free? Probably not. But doing what we can to make sure that our food is as safe as it can be is just really important.
According to the Food and Drug Administration publication, To Your Health, Food Safety for Seniors, a lot has changed for adults over the age of 65, including the way food is produced and distributed. It used to be that food was produced close to where we lived, and many people shopped daily and prepared and ate their food at home. Eating in restaurants was reserved for special occasions. Today, food comes from all over the world, and nearly 50% of the money spent on food goes to buy food that others prepared, like takeout and fast food. Another thing that's changed is our awareness and knowledge of illnesses that can be caused by harmful bacteria in food. Another thing we know today is that some people, including those over 65, can be more susceptible to getting sick from bacteria in food. On today's Sound Living, Food Safety for Seniors. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. K-State Research and Extension food scientist Karen Blakeslee says seniors who handle food safely can help keep themselves healthy.
We talk about a lot of the rules, I guess you could say, or recommendations as far as handling your food safely, and they apply to all of us. You know, clean things well, wash your fruits and vegetables, wash your hands, things like that. Keeping your hot foods hot, your cold foods cold, and avoiding cross-contamination. That applies to all of us. But when it starts to those of us that are getting older and older, that population is growing, and we may see down the road that a lot of people are becoming ill because of food that they ate. And a lot of it's because our bodies change over time. We just can't fight off the illnesses that we used to. You know, when you're good and healthy and everything, a lot of these foodborne illness type bacteria, your body is able to fight against those. But as we get older, things change, and we just are more susceptible to those kind of bacteria that could be present in your food.
We often hear that from people as they age that, I used to be able to eat all of this certain food that I wanted to eat, and then all of a sudden it's like, I think I'm going to pass because it just always seems to upset my stomach.
Yeah, you'll hear people say, that just didn't set with me. And there is something to that. That's because your system is changing over time. For example, in your stomach acid is not secreting as much as it used to. That acid that's in your stomach is a natural defense against bacteria. And if your stomach's not functioning like it used to, then bacteria is going to start winning, and your stomach's not. So that's probably why you'll hear yourself say or somebody else say, that just didn't set with me. So, and your immune system, it just gets weaker. And that could be due to a lot of things, whether it's a chronic illness, even arthritis, diabetes, those kinds of things, cancer treatments, and medications that we end up taking these days. That can really affect how well your body's natural defense system can fight these off.
We're really looking at a weakened immune system?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's even more important for older consumers to be aware of those 4 key points. Keep things clean, wash your hands, keep your hot foods hot, cold foods cold, and preventing cross-contamination.
As you mentioned earlier, a lot of this is the normal food safety guidelines that we always talk about, but maybe we tend to forget or just aren't quite as conscious of it as we age?
Well, yeah, it's part of the natural aging process, and the simple things. Don't forget to wear your glasses. If you're wearing glasses so you can see what you're doing. All of us need to do that, and myself included, I can't see without my glasses. So, if you have to wear glasses, especially do that when you're cooking. The other thing is turn on the lights so you can see what you're doing. If you're using a recipe, so you can read the recipe right, and that can help prevent any errors happening while you're cooking. Try to keep it simple. You don't have to make complicated things. If you're living by yourself or if it's just the two of you, keep food simple, and that lessens the chance of anything going wrong. Don't rely on your sight and your smell, especially your smell. It really changes over time, and medications affect that too. And smelling, your nose is a really important part of how you taste food. And so if you can't smell something, you may not know that maybe that milk has gone sour or something like that. So that goes to paying attention to the dates that are on packages. Make sure you read those and follow those, especially the perishable foods like your dairy products, your meat type products, your eggs, things like that, the cheeses. Those have a shorter shelf life than something like a box of crackers. So, we're talking two really kind of different things.
And some of those are really not even recommended for people over 65. Some of the processed meats, certain cheeses don't sit well.
Yeah, that's some things to think about. What kinds of foods that you really should not consume, especially things like any kind of raw fish like sushi. If you're a sushi eater, maybe that's not something as you get older that you should eat. When you're cooking eggs, make sure they're cooked. Raw or undercooked eggs could be a risk because of salmonella, and that's just one bacteria that could be present in eggs. Raw sprouts. Now, sprouts is something that's been recalled here within the last 6 months or so, and typically sprouts are not cooked. You put them on a sandwich or on a salad or something like that. They look really pretty. They're fluffy and everything, but sprouts have more problems with bacteria than many other foods. So I would just stay away from those if you're older and you have a weak immune system. And then just simply washing your fruits and vegetables. Wash them under running water, scrub them, use a vegetable brush when necessary, like on potatoes, those firm type fruits and vegetables. Use your fingers and rub other fruits like strawberries, for example. Rub over those because there's dirt that sticks to those. And cut off any damaged spots that are on your fruits and vegetables too, because that just opens up that food for bacteria to enter, and they just take advantage of that. So those are just some of the things to pay attention to. Luncheon meats, hot dogs, deli meats, things like that. Warm those up, especially, hot dogs. Warm those up and use a thermometer. Make sure you're using a thermometer to check temperatures of any food that you're heating. Leftovers, make sure you're reheating those so they're good and hot. There's 3 temperatures to remember. 145 is for any kind of steaks, roasts, and chops. 160 is for ground meats, hamburger, pork patties, things like that. And then 165 is for any kind of poultry product. And that 165 is also important for reheating leftovers. So there's only 3 temperatures to remember, and use that thermometer. That is your best defense to make sure bacteria is not there.
And that may be one of the biggest problems, is the fact that sometimes things get put into the refrigerator, can't remember what day we fixed that, and then we heat it up maybe 4 or 5 days later. Then you're looking at some real problems.
Yeah, leftovers should really be used within 2 or 3 days. And if not, put them in the freezer. You can freeze just about anything. Now, some things just don't freeze very well, like watery type vegetables like lettuce, for example. It just doesn't freeze very well. So those are some things to pay attention to. If you have leftovers that you brought home from a restaurant, go home directly from the restaurant, especially this time of year. Don't leave them out in the car, in a hot car for 2 or 3 hours. You're just asking for trouble. So do what you can to go home and get it in the refrigerator and get them cold. And again, on those, if you can't eat all those leftovers, freeze some of it. That way you can have a meal for another day.
What about some of the meals that we buy at the store that are frozen and we just have to heat them up? We also need to be careful there.
Yeah, you do, because some of those frozen meals are not meant to be heated in the microwave. So you got to make sure you read the directions on the package and follow those directions. Some of those frozen meals are only heated in the oven. If you heat them in the microwave, you may not get them heated properly because some of those frozen meals have raw meat in them to start with. So got to really follow the directions on those and make sure you're reheating things properly. And along that line, if meals are being delivered to you, there's lots of great services out there that can help you with meals. If you get those delivered and you're not ready to eat them, stick them in the refrigerator, and then reheat them up when you're ready to eat.
That thawing process sometimes, too, with meat, we need to follow the recommendations for that as well.
Yeah, thawing raw meats or any kind of meals, it's best to thaw everything in the refrigerator. That's your best method. You can use the microwave, but then you got to continue cooking that product, whether it's in the oven or on top of the stove. Avoid thawing things on the counter at room temperature. I even had a friend, and this was a young friend, that told me she did that, and she got sick from doing that. She thawed her raw meat on the counter. She learned her lesson. So use your refrigerator or the microwave, or in like raw meats, for example, are still in the package. You can submerge them in cold water and change that water every 30 minutes. On a lot of them, if they're thin cuts of meat, they'll thaw really quickly in about 30 minutes.
When you're using the microwave, is it also a good idea to get out that thermometer and make sure that you've reached? Because they always say to let it sit for 1 or 2 minutes.
Right. Whether you're cooking in the microwave or in the oven or on top of the stove, check that endpoint temperature. And for a lot of meat products, like a roaster or something like that, it is better to let that meat set for about 10 minutes or so. That allows the juices to reabsorb back into the meat, and the temperature still rises about 3 or 4 degrees. So yeah, just let it rest, and it's easier to cut too, and your juice won't run out right when you cut into that piece of meat. Even casseroles, lasagna, for example, it's better to let that set about 15-20 minutes. It helps it kind of settle down, and it helps make it easier to cut and hold together to get it from the pan to your plate.
Sometimes we're in just too big of a hurry.
So just take a deep breath, relax, enjoy your food, and just take some time, and you'll end up with a better meal.
Maybe just to recap some of the bigger things to remember when you kind of hit that what we call senior age.
Well, you have to assess your own personal situation. Are you going to be doing a lot of cooking, or is somebody going to be helping you, or are you going to have meals delivered? How much do you want to cook either? And so that's going to factor into that. But just pay attention to those 4 key points that I started off with, washing your hands. That is your best defense for all of us. If you've got pets in the house too, wash your hands before you handle your food. Use that thermometer. Make sure your hot foods are hot. Keep your cold foods cold. Wash your fruits and vegetables before you eat them, and clean them well. And then do your best to prevent cross-contamination. Keep your raw meats away from your ready-to-eat foods like your salads and lettuces and things like that.
I know that there's a big push to reduce food waste, but in some cases we're still saying, when in doubt, throw it out.
Absolutely. You just, these days, we live in a different world. 30, 40 years ago, you may say, oh, we're going to keep that. We're not going to throw that away. And I get that, but there also comes a point where some things just may not be as safe as they could be. And so that when in doubt, throw it out statement that we commonly say is a good one. There's nothing wrong with that. Because a lot of those foods, if you've got a compost pile, you can compost it. So you're truly not throwing it away, you're repurposing it. So that's one way to help you feel better about tossing that food that may not look so good.
Because the consequences of that are pretty severe.
They are pretty severe, and it really depends on what kind of bacteria is in the food. You don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It kind of depends on the symptoms that you start seeing. And the symptoms, they may not show up right after you eat that meal. The soonest it might show up within an hour, it may take 2 or 3 days, or it could take longer than that. And I don't know about you, but I can't even hardly remember what I ate 2 or 3 days ago. So that's what makes this really difficult. And so doing what you can to prevent any kind of problems from happening is your best defense. That's what we call reducing risk. Will it ever be 100% bacteria-free? Probably not. That's just the reality of it, because bacteria is everywhere. But doing what we can to make sure that our food is as safe as it can be is just really important.
That's K-State Research and Extension food scientist Karen Blakeslee. More information on handling food safely is available on the Food and Drug Administration website, www.fda.gov. You can also find food safety information at county and district extension offices, as well as on the extension website, www.ksre.ksu.edu. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.